Today on the Mindful Jiu-Jitsu channel, I want to discuss a very poignant topic. Why do so many students quit at Blue Belt? The subject of BJJ students quitting at Blue Belt has become a well-known meme in recent years. I've certainly benefited from creating art on this subject on my Ongi84 Instagram account. However, I believe that there is more than a grain of truth to the suggestion of students being most likely to quit at Blue Belt. From surveys I've conducted via my Instagram account, I estimate that 80% of the BJJ population is made up of white and blue belts. This alone suggests that most practitioners are not able to progress past the second belt. In this video, I will share my thoughts on this matter and how I think you can overcome the Blue Belt blues. I believe that Blue Belt is the point at every Jiu-Jitsu practitioner's journey where they experience Impostor Syndrome for the first time. As a white belt, you are generally expected to be the patsy in the room. At the start of your journey, you will be submitted left, right and centre by more advanced belts. Anything over and above this accepted standard of performance is a bonus. I believe that this gives white belts the freedom to try new things. After all, failure is so common that you might as well try a multitude of different approaches to see which ones deliver success. If a student delivers consistent attendance, in many cases, this carefree approach leads to progress as they first improve their submission defense, then later converting defense into offense as they're able to attack with their own submission threats. However, once that white belt around the waist is replaced with a new shiny blue one, for many people there is a mental shift. Whilst nothing changes regarding one's physical ability in the immediate aftermath of being promoted to blue belt, imposter syndrome starts to creep in. Suddenly, there's a new weight of expectation that didn't previously exist. The change in colour of your belt puts a bullseye on your back, whether you like it or not. Other white belts look at you as fresh meat, as the blue belt closest to them in ability that they might be able to scalp. There is an internal voice telling you that as a blue belt, you cannot possibly be tapped out by a white belt. And due to the cognitive phenomenon of loss aversion bias, which makes us feel a greater emotional impact of loss than the joy of an equivalent gain, you do your very best to avoid getting tapped out by other white belts. You play a more reserved and conservative game and stop trying new techniques. This leads to stagnation in your jiu-jitsu, and suddenly this added pressure leads to an outcome that you didn't think possible. Jiu-jitsu is no longer fun for you. And the reality is that if jiu-jitsu stops being enjoyable, you will eventually quit. So, does the scenario I just described sound familiar to you? Do you no longer find jiu-jitsu fun due to self-imposed pressures and expectations? If so, I will now cover some mental techniques I've used across almost 2 decades of practicing jiu-jitsu to help overcome this imposter syndrome. The first thing to note is that the imposter syndrome you feel is a normal feeling. You can't control these thoughts since they are generated by your autopilot mind. However, what you need to quickly do is disassociate your blue belt from your sense of self-identity. One of the presuppositions of neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP, states that people are not their behaviours. I like to extend this principle to other things that we may cover. You are not your blue belt. Yes, you have earned your blue belt through consistent effort and subsequent skill acquisition. However, it is something you have rather than something you are. Why is this so important? If you are someone consistently driven by accomplishing goals, you will probably find it harder to disassociate your belt rank from your identity than others who are not hardwired this way. What this ultimately means is that if, and most likely when, you are submitted by white belts, this will feel like a direct threat to your identity. And no matter how mentally strong you think you are, no one can deal with this existential threat for long periods of time. The faster you can mentally separate your belt rank from your identity, the easier it will be to free yourself from the shackles of self-judgment which have held you back. Jiu-jitsu can start to feel fun again. The second mental technique I use is to practice discernment rather than judgment. Whenever I'm bested by someone who is a lower belt rank, I choose to objectively evaluate the role rather than self-judge. Yes, I might have been positionally dominated or submitted by a purple belt. However, outside of belt rank, what are the other salient factors to consider? Perhaps the other athlete was bigger, stronger, fitter and younger than me. Even with a technique gap, it is always going to be challenging to overcome age and size disadvantages. If you can objectively discern rather than brutally judge yourself, then you can build greater resilience to bounce back from these setbacks. Rather than avoid reality, I prefer to run headfirst into the real possibility of getting submitted by lower belt ranks. And I encourage you to do the same, because this will normalize the process of losing to lower grades and remove much of the pain and disappointment when it happens. The way I do this is by frequently training with some of the young purple belt competitors at my club. They are younger, bigger, fitter and stronger than me and super technical. And even though I'm a second-degree black belt, I find myself on the losing end most of the time. This really helps me to practice discernment rather than judgment, and I internally celebrate the rare occasions when I perform well against them. The last mental hack I apply is making sure to find the gifts and opportunities within those roles when I'm bested by lower grades. When I'm bested at any time in sparring, I spend time reflecting on what I can learn. These are the most valuable educational experiences, and I've made the biggest leaps in my development through this quiet introspection. For example, getting choked out by a visiting purple belt recently exposed a gap in my knowledge on Kimura escapes. I converted that gift by researching Lachlan Giles' sub-meta course on the topic, and now I feel like I've leveled up my defense in that area. If you can take this approach, you too can drive continuous improvement in your jiu-jitsu. And so, to conclude, I hope that you have found some effective methods to crush those feelings of imposter syndrome. I would advise you to apply some of these mental techniques sooner rather than later, since these negative feelings only intensify as you move up the belt rankings. I have personally known students who quit at brown belt. I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments. Feel free to message me if you are a blue belt who is thinking of quitting. If you could like the video and subscribe to the channel, I'd really appreciate your support. And if you made it this far, thanks for listening, and please stay tuned for more content from the Mindful Jiu-Jitsu channel.